Ukraine with Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry. He's a former NATO commander and joins us now. Good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, two developments over the last 24 hours or so. One is a breakthrough, we're told, being confirmed by many different sources in Ukraine by the Ukrainian counteroffensive near Zaporizhzhia, but also Zelensky announcing in his regular nightly broadcast to his nation that he is sacking his defence minister, Alexei Reznikov. Let's start with the defence minister. Why has he had to go?
Well, I think we're assuming that everybody's on the same side in Ukraine. I think there are political tensions, just as you would get in this country in a democracy that isn't at war. So I think this reflects different priorities, different political constituencies, and the fact that not everybody's on side with the strategy that's going on at the moment.
Well, indeed, and there's been some talk about strategy, or whether it's these ongoing, very long-standing corruption allegations against lots of figures in the defence ministry. We've seen, lots of people have been sacked from the administration over the last year or so. A big sort of crackdown on corruption. We know one of the biggest issues in Ukraine prior to the invasion was this basically huge level, as is always the case with these countries that have been under Soviet control, massive levels of corruption. The defence minister, Alexei Reznikov, has said, look, these are just smears against him, but this is something that Zelensky has been very hard on.
Yes, he has. And the problem is, in wartime, you get profiteering, you get all sorts of false accounting. You get it everywhere. But as you pointed out, Julia, it's also a means by which you can actually get rid of somebody. We see Xi Jinping doing it all the time in China. And I'm afraid to say, once you've lost the confidence of the president, the political establishment and the people, then you have to go, whether thing is true or not. So right now, I think it's two things. I think it's obviously the smell around him has to go away, but also I think there is a difference about the strategy that is going on in the south.
Indeed. Well, let's also talk about that strategy in the south, this counter-offensive, breaking through what the first of two defence lines by the Russian forces near Zaporizhzhia. This is all about sort of taking back the south of the country, isn't it? But there's been some criticism that perhaps Ukrainian forces have spread themselves too thinly. Others saying, well, they had to counter-offensive, in all areas to make sure they weren't prey to more offences by Russians. But how do you think it is going? Is this a game changer?
Not yet. What's happening at the moment is the Ukrainians are probing all along the line where the Russians are weak. We've got to bear in mind the real imbalance of manpower between Ukraine and Russia. Russia is doing what Marshal Zhukov said, is throwing corpses into the fight, whereas Ukraine can't afford to do that. They don't have unlimited amounts of manpower, just like we didn't in the First World War. What's happening is that you're seeing an imbalance in the way in which logistics are being treated. The Ukrainians are using their drones to target logistics and supply chains behind the Russian lines. And also, the Ukrainians are winning the drone fight. They're using vast numbers of light drones with explosives to take out these supply chains and logistic hubs. But what we've got to bear in mind, Julia, is that the Russians have sown 16,000 landmines per square mile. So for every advance the Ukrainians make, their engineers are having to clear these mines. And traditionally, you need a 3-to-1 advantage to really get a breakthrough. But we shouldn't underestimate that if the Ukrainians are able to break through near Zaporizhzhia, and certainly they've done, as you say, pretty well in the last week or so, and get to the Black Sea coast near Melitopol or Mariupol, then there's a real opportunity of Russian collapse. But I'm afraid to say the general that will come to Russia's aid is the one that always comes to their aid, and that is General Winter, which is approaching. And I think we're probably in for a Ukrainian advance along the line, but I'm afraid it's going to settle down for mud and snow and I think
here we go again.
Really conflict.
Indeed, Dr. Chris Parry, as we know, war is not usually the sort of the quick conflict that a lot of people think it is. Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry, thank you so much for that. We bring back in James.